The mission is simple: to help high achievers naturally eliminate emotional and physical obstacles so they can optimize their life for higher achievement. Welcome. You have just entered the Genesis Zone. Good day, and welcome to the Genesis Zone show. This is Dr. Brian Brown. Thank you for taking time out of your busy Thursday to join us. In today's fast-paced world, low energy levels have become a prevalent concern for many individuals, impacting both their personal and professional lives. The modern American lifestyle, characterized by long work hours, unhealthy eating habits, constant exposure to digital devices, and taking very little time off for vacation, has contributed to a widespread decline in low energy levels. In this episode, we will explore the significance of low energy. We're going to delve into expert opinions on its root causes and provide 10 effective ways to boost energy levels and reclaim vitality. According to a recent study conducted by the National Health and Nutritional Examination Survey, or NHANES, which is a very large ongoing study, nearly 45% of Americans report experiencing low energy levels on a very regular basis. Now, this alarming statistic highlights the scale of the issue and its significant impact on overall well-being of individuals and society as a whole. The repercussions of low energy levels ripple far beyond personal discomfort. In the workplace, reduced energy can lead to decreased productivity, increased absenteeism, increased work injuries on the job, impaired decision-making abilities, costing billions of dollars to businesses and corporations all across the world. On a societal level, the collective impact of low energy can contribute to a less engaged and vibrant community. Now, on a personal level, low energy can mean that you're disengaged from family and social life in general, and you just don't want to participate in life. To effectively address low energy levels, it's important to understand the underlying causes. So what are some of those? Well, experts point to several factors that can contribute to this phenomenon. Poor diet is one of them. You know, the typical westernized diet is very high in processed foods, refined sugars and carbohydrates, unhealthy fats, and all of this can lead to energy crashes and fatigue. One of the things that I hear a lot with people in the clinic is around the holidays or around the time that they travel for vacation, they'll come back and they say, I'm not feeling right. I think I need some adjustments in my supplements and things like that, because they feel out of balance. And when I do a thorough history of what's been happening in the past few weeks, it always boils down to diet most of the time. The next thing is sedentary lifestyle. Lack of physical activity can weaken the body. It weakens the immune system. It weakens our muscles. It diminishes our energy reserves. Believe it or not, you would think that working out, doing physical activity would deplete your energy reserves. It doesn't. It actually builds them up. It makes them stronger. It makes them more resilient. And when we don't use them, such as participating in a sedentary lifestyle where we don't move very much, we sit behind a desk all day, we don't exercise, we don't get up, we don't take the stairs at work instead of taking the elevator, then, we set ourselves up for diminished energy reserves. Another thing is sleep deprivation. Researchers point to the fact that insufficient or poor sleep disrupts the body's natural restorative process, leading to fatigue. It's plain and simple. And we know for a fact that if you're not getting REM sleep, you're not getting deep sleep, you're just not waking up feeling rested in the morning. Therefore, you're going to feel more fatigued throughout the day. That's a whole nother episode of another day. And I will be doing one of those coming up soon. It's like, what can we do to improve deep sleep? The next up is what experts say is chronic stress. And we live in a world, in a society where stress is the order of the day. Prolonged stress taxes the body's energy resources and can lead to burnout. So basically what this amounts to, it activates the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system is responsible for regulating whether or not you were in fight or flight mode or whether or not you were in rest and digest mode. Now, it's a whole lot more complex than that, but at its simplest form, the autonomic nervous system regulates that. So when you're under chronic stress, you stay in fight or flight. Now, in the office, we have some ways to measure the autonomic nervous system in real time and tell exactly what's going on with that. And we have ways to reprogram and retrain the nervous system so that it comes out of fight or flight and stays out of fight or flight. But chronic stress can definitely lead to low energy. I see it all the time. I was a victim to that. If you want to, I don't like using the word victim, but I was a victim to that because when I was electrocuted at age 5, I had 40 years before it was actually caught. 40 years of my heart stopping in the middle of the night repeatedly. And then my adrenal glands would dump massive amounts of adrenaline into my bloodstream to jumpstart my heart back. This created a condition called adrenal fatigue. And that adrenal fatigue, because I was staying in fight or flight, I was under chronic stress all the time, caused me to be fatigued and have low energy and brain fog and weight gain even that came along with all of that. So chronic stress is a big one, and it's huge in society today. Next up, experts say they tell us that dehydration contributes to low energy. Even mild dehydration can sap your energy and impair cognitive functioning. I'll be honest with you. I don't drink anything with caffeine in it anymore. I used to rely on caffeine wholeheartedly all the time. It's been years since I've had caffeine. And it's one of those things that when I listen to my body and I feel like my energy is kind of ebbing just a little bit, I drink water. Now I drink close to a gallon of water a day, sometimes more, especially this time of the year when it's warmer weather season. But I drink at least 3/4 of a gallon of water a day, usually a gallon of water a day. And it really helps with attention, concentration, focus, energy, so on and so forth. So mild dehydration can sap your energy. Be aware of that because most people walking around today are dehydrated. I very rarely meet a person that's drinking the amount of water that they should be drinking each day. Vitamin and mineral deficiencies is what experts tell us next. Inadequate intake of essential nutrients can leave the body lacking in energy. Well, you've probably, if you've been in the health and wellness realm any length of time, you've probably heard that our soil is depleted of vital nutrients and trace minerals and things that we need in our body. So we do have to supplement. We just have to supplement wisely. I believe in measuring what those levels are so we can understand where your deficiencies are, and then we can adjust accordingly. Next up is lack of sunlight. Reduced exposure to natural light can disrupt circadian rhythms and affect energy levels. And guess what? Unless you work in manual labor where you're outside all day anyway, your job is probably inside under fluorescent lights. Fluorescent lights are the worst for disrupting circadian rhythms. That's why in my house, we use old incandescent lights. Yep, they're not as energy efficient, but they don't disrupt circadian rhythms as greatly as fluorescent lights do. And then certain medical conditions can sap our energy, whether that be anemia or thyroid conditions or low hormone, chronic fatigue syndromes, those types of things, which are more post-viral syndrome related, by the way. So these are just a few of the basic causes of low energy, and they certainly play a cumulative role in your low energy challenges. Now, there's another major cause for your low energy, and it has to do with your genes. More specifically, I want to talk about methylation. When it comes to your genes, methylation is the kingpin of control mechanisms. I know it's a big word, but it's kind of a buzzword in certain circles that gets thrown around in these health and wellness groups and health and wellness gurus. But my hang up with people talking about methylation is, and I don't mean any offense against anyone that speaks about it, but 99.9% of the people that speak about methylation don't know what they're talking about. It's just that simple. And this is really important for you to know because methylation is such a critical process within the body that without it, you probably don't even know this. Without proper methylation, you die. And you probably don't know this, that methylation controls over 300 metabolic processes and metabolic pathways on the body. And you may not know that most every genetic testing company on the planet only tests for one of the 5 methylation pathways that regulate methylation. In other words, they only test for about 2 genes out of 13 that are critical for assessing whether or not you have good, quote unquote, good or quote unquote bad methylation. Now, by now, I think you can tell that methylation plays a significant role, at least I hope you can, in controlling a wide range of metabolic processes in the body. I mean, you're taking my word for it that it's over 300 metabolic processes, and that without it, we die, and that most quote unquote experts and people that talk about methylation don't understand what they're talking about. So, I mean, I was talking to, this is so funny. So I was talking to a genetic expert. Now, this person is not a health professional by any stretch of the imagination. They don't have any health training. They just became a wellness coach, and they learned about genetics, and now they build themselves as a genetic expert, blah, blah, blah. And this person commented on one of my posts that I did some time back. And I reached out to them, and we started DMing back and forth. Long story short, it led to a telephone conversation, and I got on the phone with this person, and we had a very interesting telephone conversation, because it was like this person was trying to convince me that their way was the right way. And I said, so you're checking all 5 phases of the methylation pathway? And this person was dumbfounded. Like, what are you talking about? And I'm thinking, this person has about 20 times more followers than I do. And they are leading people down a path that doesn't get the results that I get. When we treat patients, and we always start with genetics in my clinic, and we always start with methylation, because methylation, as I said, is kind of the regulating mechanism within all of the genetic pathways that controls which switches get turned on, which switches get turned off. I'll talk more about that here in just a second. But it's critical to understand that without proper methylation, we don't function at the most optimal levels, and our energy suffers first and foremost. Now, does it mean that once we get methylation fixes, so to speak, on board, that energy is going to pop up automatically? The answer sometimes is no, and here's why. Because there's a theory called adaptive reserve theory. Now, I actually think it's more than a theory. I think it's reality, because it's what I see clinically. I see some people come into the office and we fix their methylation and they get results within 2 weeks. I see other people come in and we identify that they have horrible methylation, just like the other person, and we begin fixing their methylation, and it can take 3 months, 12 weeks. And it takes a little bit longer for that person. Well, why is that? It's because the person over here that it took longer for, their reserve, their pool of reserves was depleted so severely that it took a while for those reserves to get built back up to where they could actually feel a difference. And that's the difference between a person who responds very quickly and a person who responds slowly. It doesn't mean they're not responding. It just means we need to stick with it and keep pushing further for a little bit longer. Now, is it as long as 12 months, 18 months, 24 months? In most cases, no. In some cases, yes. And here's why. Because of prescription pharmaceutical medications, there are certain classes of medications that will, say, for example, deplete the essential vitamins and minerals that you need in order to methylate, that you need in order to have precursors to be able to even go into the methylation pathways, that deplete energy type enzymes within the body, like coenzyme Q10, which is essential for mitochondrial function, which is essential for energy function. So there are multiple facets to energy. It's not just simple cut and dry. there are multiple facets to it, but methylation plays a critical role in this entire process. That's why I'm talking about methylation today. That's why I'm calling out these quote unquote experts that don't really know what they're talking about when it comes to methylation, because they only focus on one phase of the methylation pathway. And when you mention 5 phases, they say, well, I didn't even realize there were 5 phases. And literally that happened on a phone conversation recently with a quote unquote expert in genetics. Now this person happened to be, like I said, a self-proclaimed expert, not a health professional. And it was really puzzling for me how this person is able to be out there promoting what they're promoting and getting away with it. I just don't understand it, but here we are. So remember, I mentioned a second ago that without methylation, you would potentially die. In fact, your quality of life is going to be miserable until you die, and then you're just going to fade away. Here's some key metabolic processes that methylation actually controls, in case you want to know. Now, this is a little nerdy. I understand that. I'll try to break it down as easy as I can. But I want you to get a grasp on what methylation controls. I'm obviously not going to go over 300 metabolic processes, 300 plus metabolic processes, but I am going to hit the highlights. So first up is methylation of your DNA. Now, hear me when I say this. Don't get this confused with the methylation that we're talking about. Yes, it's similar, but methylation that we're talking about is a general umbrella term for these 300 metabolic processes that get controlled. Methylation of your DNA is one of those 300 plus metabolic processes, but it's very specific to your DNA. It plays a vital role in gene expression, gene regulation, turning specific genes on or off, and influencing various biological processes, including cell differentiation, cell development, and cellular identity. So DNA methylation is critical. It's one of the most critical ways that methylation works. For example, if we're not methylating well, then we don't turn bad epigenetic switches off and good epigenetic switches on. So that's part of the DNA methylation, because it regulates those switches and how those switches are turned on and off. So, and the opposite is true. When we're methylating properly, then DNA methylation is in place. Again, it's one of those 300 plus metabolic processes, and those good switches get turned on and the bad switches get turned off. And that's exactly what we want to happen. So in order to work with, say, a set of genes that controls mood and mental health disorders, anxiety, so on and so forth, we have to focus on DNA methylation first. That's why I say in our clinic, we always focus on methylation, the 5 phases of the methylation first, and then we work on all the other groups or clusters of genes for detoxification, inflammation, autoimmune conditions, and so on and so forth. Because if we don't fix methylation, we're not going to fix anything else. We have to get the DNA methylation fixed first. So we start with the methylation process. Next up is a next metabolic process within the body is neurotransmitter synthesis. Methylation is involved in the synthesis or metabolism of neurotransmitters, meaning synthesis. When I say synthesis, I mean the making of your neurotransmitters. So without proper methylation, you don't make serotonin, you don't make dopamine, you don't make norepinephrine, you don't make melatonin, you don't make GABA, which is like your natural Xanax in the body, that calming chemical in the front part of the brain. And you don't regulate your mood, and you have poor cognitive function. Your attention, concentration, and focus goes down. I won't bore you with all the processes, but in its simplest form, there's a trash byproduct. Think of it as exhaust from your gas burning engine vehicle. Okay. If you drive a gas burning engine vehicle, it emits exhaust. Well, this exhaust inside the cell is called homocysteine, and homocysteine is an exhaust or trash byproduct of energy production. And we need to convert that homocysteine into methionine. And it does that by accepting a donated methyl group from the methylation process. Homocysteine takes it, it turns into methionine. Methionine then turns into S-adenylmethionine, or SAMe, which is a supplement that you can buy on the market. And then SAMe actually turns into serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, so on and so forth. So there's this cascade of events that occurred. Now, do you need to take SAMe? No, I think you need to go upstream and you need to treat the methylation first. And then if you have to add SAMe as a supplement, you add SAMe as a supplement. Obviously, you need to do this with a health professional that understands genetic pathways and these processes. The next metabolic process that methylation controls is hormone regulation. Methylation is crucial for proper regulation of hormones, including those produced by the thyroid, the adrenals, metabolism, energy type hormones, stress type hormones, your sex hormones are all affected by methylation. And if you're not methylating properly, you're either not going to produce the hormones in the proper way, or you're not going to convert them the way they should be into their useful forms. Next process, metabolic process, is detoxification. Methylation is crucial for proper detoxification. And without it, harmful substances in the body, including heavy metals, environmental toxins, and certain medications will just build up in the system until toxicity-wise, your body just starts shutting down. And we see this in, for example, in somebody that's in kidney failure or liver failure. That doesn't mean that's a methylation issue. I'm just using that as an example of when toxins build up in the body, your body actually dies. It just shuts down. So proper methylation helps us detoxify at the cellular level and the tissue level so that we can get rid of these things that we need to get rid of. The next metabolic process is energy production. Methylation is involved in the synthesis and metabolism of coenzyme Q10. You may have heard it as CoQ10, and an amino acid called carnitine, which are essential for cellular energy production through the mitochondria system. Okay. Remember when I said that there are some pharmaceutical medications that will deplete certain essential elements throughout the body, whether they be nutritional type things, vitamins, minerals that it depletes. Well, there are some pharmaceuticals that deplete CoQ10. And I have learned over time, I've treated a lot of people. I've treated one person years ago. This was before we even had access to genetics to understand this. Treated one person years ago. She was in her 30s. She was actually in a nursing home. I got consulted on her to treat her for depression. And when I was taking her history, she was in the nursing home because she had taken a specific pharmaceutical medication that helped with cholesterol, supposedly, quote unquote, helped with cholesterol. And it had depleted her CoQ10 so severely that she was going into multi-system organ failure. Now, my experience has been, since we've had genetics and understanding how people genetically methylate, is that those that are poor methylators, because they poor methylate, they don't produce enough CoQ10 on their own anyway. They don't metabolize it. They don't make it correctly. They don't convert it into the useful form from ubiquinone to ubiquinol. And without methylation, none of that happens. So these people may, on paper, tolerate this particular type of medication that helps with cholesterol, but because they're poor methylators, they're behind the 8 ball and they get further and further depleted. And that adaptive reserve theory, remember, we just continue to deplete their reserves to the point where they can't recover. And that's what ends up happening. So energy production is critical when it comes to methylation. Lipid metabolism is another metabolic process. We hear about people talking about, oh, I have high cholesterol. My good cholesterol is too low. My bad cholesterol is too high, this, that, and the other. Well, methylation is essential for the breakdown of unhealthy fats within the body. So just keep that in the back of your mind. A lot of times when we're dealing with poor methylation, we're dealing with people that have lipid issues, and we're dealing with people that have thyroid issues. And when we fix the methylation, the thyroid functions more properly. The thyroid functioning more properly actually lowers lipids. It's in the literature. You don't have to take my word for it. You just do a Google Scholar search for it. And you're going to find data that supports that low thyroid equals high lipids. You get the thyroid fixed and lipids come down. And I'm not talking about clinical hypothyroidism. I'm talking about subclinical hypothyroidism. And it's in the European literature all over the place. In the United States, we don't recognize it because there's one particular big pharma company that makes a particular thyroid medication that likes us to think that low doses of those medications are sufficient and we can only treat clinical hypothyroidism. And that's not true from a functional medicine standpoint. We need to treat subclinical hypothyroidism. And when I treat subclinical hypothyroidism, I see lipids lower every single time in a person that has high lipids. But we're also fixing the methylation pathways as well. So it's a twofer, if you will. The next metabolic process is protein synthesis. Now, this gets a little boring and really, really nerdy. Methylation can impact the synthesis and activity of proteins, affecting the function and stability in various cellular processes, as well as various tissues throughout the body. So show me a person that has poor methylation. I will show you a person that has poor cellular and tissue integrity because of lack of protein synthesis. So it's critical, again, to not have leaky cells and things like that, leaky tissues, to have tissues that function like they should, to have proper protein synthesis. Histone methylation, again, super, super nerdy term, histone methylation, but this is what it means. This process involves the modification of a certain type of protein called histone, which packages and organizes DNA within the cell nucleus. Okay, that's critical so that when we create new cells, we're able to pass on that new DNA. Histone methylation plays a role in gene regulation, and without it, we don't function properly. So think of if you've ever had to send a large file via email, think of histone methylation as the way in which all of that information gets compressed into a compressed file. Okay. And we can compress a file into a smaller file so it's easy to send and sends rapidly across email instead of sending it in the large file form, which is very slow. So histone methylation speeds up the process of packing all that information in a really tight, neat bundle so that it can then be passed on to a new cell during the replication process. And lastly is inflammation management. Now, of all the experts I looked at, they listed everything that we've talked about thus far. I'm adding inflammation management here. And you need to know that I've found that inflammation management, this process that occurs through methylation with inflammation management, is an indirect back channel, if you will, process. For example, if you're toxically overloaded and in need of detoxification because of poor methylation, you are going to be inflamed. If your hormones are not metabolizing correctly and in a healthy manner due to poor methylation, you are going to be even more inflamed. So in my clinical experience, treating poor methylation and everything that it's involved in indirectly through back channels will help control inflammation. These are just a few examples of the many, many metabolic processes in which methylation is involved. But I hope it gives you an understanding of how critically important methylation is. Given its wide-ranging impact, maintaining proper methylation is crucial for overall health and well-being. It's worth noting that methylation is a complex and highly regulated process, and its dysregulation can have significant implications for various aspects of human physiology. As such, I personally think everyone should have their methylation genes checked for all 5 phases of the methylation pathway. It would save a person from experiencing a lot of potential health challenges and heartache later on down the road. But if you struggle with depression, anxiety, panic, obsessive compulsive disorder, bipolar disorder, ADHD, autistic spectrum disorder, autoimmune issues, or you just plain old have low energy, you definitely deserve to have all 5 phases of your methylation pathway fixed. In the meantime, while you're waiting to get your genes checked by an expert, here are 10 ways to boost your energy. Number 1, prioritize your sleep. Number 2, adopt a balanced diet. Number 3, stay hydrated. Number 4, participate in regular exercise. Number 5, manage your stress. Number 6, get sunlight exposure on a daily basis. Number 7, limit caffeine and sugar. Number 8, take breaks, mental health breaks and physical breaks. Number 9, engage in activities you love. And number 10, supplement wisely. Low energy levels are a widespread challenge in society as a whole, affecting millions of individuals and impacting everything from work life to personal life. By understanding the root causes and implementing these 10 effective strategies, it is possible to improve energy levels and reclaim vitality. Remember, making sustainable lifestyle changes takes time and patience. So start with small steps and gradually build towards a more energized and fulfilled life. And by prioritizing your well-being, you can rediscover the spark within and embrace life with renewed vigor and energy. As usual, I'm so grateful that you joined me today on the Genesis Zone show. If you're curious about all this, the 5 phases of the methylation pathway and how you can check your 5 phases of the methylation pathway, I'm the person to talk to. Reach out to me with any questions that you have on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, at Dr. Brian G. Brown. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have. If you're one of those curious self-starter types and you want to know a little bit more about genetics and epigenetics and how you can start the ball rolling in that direction to work with your genes and what I do and in my work that I work with people, go to drbriangBrown.com/gene hack/bootcamp. If you're watching this online, you can see that right there on the screen underneath my image. And I've got a free boot camp there for you that you can participate in. You go at your own pace and work through it, and it will kind of help you identify which genetic areas need to be addressed first. It's kind of really cool the way we laid that out. So again, if you have any questions, message me on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn at Dr. Brian G. Brown. Be glad to answer any questions you got. Until next time, this is Dr. Brian Brown. Stay in the zone.